Hi there, and welcome to another This or That video where we are going to be looking at the Enneagram Type 1 and the Enneagram Type 6. And as you may have heard, or as I say in many of these videos, um, the typing process is part of the journey. And sometimes people go through an Enneagram training, they read a book, and immediately they see themselves in one of the 9 types. For others, we can struggle between 2 or 3, maybe sometimes even 4 in the beginning. And then as we continue to learn, maybe we have it narrowed down and we are just kind of stuck between these 2. We can see ourselves in both. So in so many different areas. And then we're just confusing ourselves and we're maybe feeling like, I can't move forward until I figure this out. I always say the typing process is part of our self-awareness, personal growth journey because it's causing us to think about things, to ask questions of ourselves that maybe we haven't thought about before, we haven't asked before, we haven't reflected on before. So wherever you're at in that process, my hope and the intention of this video is that it gives you some additional clues to consider that maybe you do walk away from this video with some clarity and some maybe confidence in one type over the other, or it gives you some new things to think about. Because even if you don't know the answer, you're going to be asking yourself some questions, like I said, that maybe you haven't thought about before. So, with that, if you are struggling between a 1 and a 6, it makes a lot of sense because there are several things that these 2 have in common. And this is a common challenge that people will have. Am I a 1 or am I 6? Now, as a reminder, our 1s are striving to feel perfect. They are looking at the world through right and wrong, good or bad, what's ethical, what's not. And then how can I take things from good to great? How can I fix? What needs fixing? What can I help make better? And they want to avoid being criticized at all costs. Our type 6 are striving to feel safe, secure. They're looking through their lens of the world through risks, threats, and then how can I mitigate those risks and those threats? How can I have a plan? How can I make sure I'm prepared? And then how can I have a contingency plan to make sure that that plan works? And so they want to avoid being put in a position where they are unsafe, and not secure and unprepared. It just feels like the worst thing in the world. Now, when that is still not clear, I'm going to give you a couple other things to consider to help you narrow it down. The first one is when we are thinking about doing something the right way. Our type 1 tends to have a very specific a way or thought about there is one way. Either this is the right way or this is the way, or I need to find the right way. Whereas a 6 might be looking for the best way. And now the right way and the best way, little nuance there, but 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 different. And so the best way could be we could do it this way, or we could do it this way. We could do it this way. What's kind of the best way in this situation? And so they might have multiple paths, multiple ways to go from point A to point B, whereas our 1 tends to believe there is one right way to get from point A to point B. Now, as a reminder, I say this in all the videos, there is no right or wrong. There's no better way necessarily. It's just what is, and then how do I use that to serve me? And then how might I be overusing that and it's giving me some problem. It's causing some challenges in my life and my relationship. So that's one thing. When it comes to planning, is there one right way or are there multiple ways to get from point A to B? And maybe it's the best way in that certain situation. The second thing to think about is both will worry. Both I often hear will identify with, gosh, I have some anxiety, I have some worry about doing it right, about it turning out okay. Now, a 1 will worry, but they will have a tendency to, once they come up with a plan, for that worry to dissipate almost all the way. Um, it won't be as strong for them. It's like, okay, I'm worried, I'm concerned, this is gonna go well, then I'm gonna do it right. But once I have a plan, then it just becomes, okay, I just need to work hard. I just need to put my head down, do the plan. And so I'm not gonna worry quite as much because I have that plan. Now, a six is also going to have that worry, but what I hear from them and what you'll see often with this type is that they will worry before, they will worry during, and then they will worry after. It is a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety, a lot of thinking, because is something bad going to happen before? Is something bad going to happen during? Is something bad going to happen afterwards? And so that's a little bit different than thinking. Not to say that ones don't ever look back and not worry, but their worry isn't necessarily going to be if something bad going to happen. It's more like about me. Did I get it right? Did I do it right? Well, again, that's why these two types can be a little confusing, because they're not clear differences. Sometimes you really have to think about things. You have to really kind of reflect on, gosh, what's been true for me most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. Let's see here. Now, when it comes to consequences and not getting it right, um, things not going the right way, a one will tend to have a lot of internal feelings about it and have a tendency maybe to blame others, like, oh, that person should have worked hard enough, or that person could have done more. Sometimes that will happen. Most of the time, though, that blame is self-directed. So it is, what could I have done better? I shouldn't have let them take that on. I'm the only one that can do this the right way. I shouldn't have delegated that out, or I did something wrong. And it's there, they tend to blame themselves. And this kind of goes back to that very intense, harsh inner critic that a one will have, where a six has that kind of very chattery inner committee, a lot of voices. Sometimes they're mean, but many times it's just a lot of voices that causes that self-doubt and that causes them to think, we could do it this way, we could do it this way, we could do it this way, rather than the harsh inner critic saying, this is the right way, you didn't do it the right way. So when we're thinking about consequences, when things didn't go the right way, a one is going to typically blame themselves, kind of that's going to be more internal, whereas a six, it's going to be more about the external. Um, what what will people think? Will I get in trouble? Am I going to get in trouble from somebody's else's rules, or am I going to, is my perception, is their perception of me, how is that going to change? I want to avoid getting in sort of trouble. So it's not necessarily about, I want to make sure that I do it the right way. I don't care what other people think. The six is more, what do other people think? Did I do it the right way, kind of according to their expectations? So again, not a huge difference, but it is a meaningful difference that's worth kind of sitting on and reflecting on. Let's see here. We kind of already talked about the one having that right way, and a six going to do a lot more contingency planning. They're going to do a lot more kind of risk assessment, and be thinking about multiple future outcomes, and then trying to navigate the decision making process with, okay, what's most likely to happen in the future? What can I do now versus there being that one right way. Now, sometimes people will still be torn between these. And so we'll talk about the fluidity of each point, the resource points for each of these two types that can sometimes provide some additional clarity. So for our type one, in a time of stress, or sometimes you'll hear it called, hear me calling it the supporting strategy, that's that of the type four. So what that looks like in a time of stress is that they may start to be even more, have more of an intense inner critic like the 4 can also have. They can become ones can feel a little hopeless. They can get a little melancholy. They can become a little pessimistic in those times. So they won't necessarily become a 4, but they could take on and present like a stressed out 4 might do. And then sometimes they'll use the striving to feel unique of the 4 to support striving to feel perfect. And what that looks like is like, hey, I'm okay to be unique. I'm okay to stand over here by myself in my conviction of what I believe to be right. Nobody else has to agree. Nobody else has to be over here with me. I'm okay standing alone. So that's sometimes how they'll support that strategy. Now, the type that they tend to neglect the most, which also happens to be their growth arrow, is the type 7, striving to feel excited, striving to feel perfect, striving to feel excited. Kinda can see how they might butt heads. Feels reckless to feel excited. It might feel chaotic. It might feel irresponsible. It might feel, unnecessary. Hey, we have work to do. There's a way to do that. It's not about what brings you joy. It's about what needs to be done. And so there can be some conflict in there. Ironically, there is a lot of growth opportunities in the type 7 acting from a place of joy, allowing spontaneity in your life, allowing flexibility, not being so rigid, allowing there not to be just one single right way, feeling perfect, maybe in some of the imperfections, feeling perfect in the excitement, in the mess, in the chaos at times. And so there will be some work in there for our type 1s. And so sometimes what can be helpful is to think, gosh, where do I have my most like where are the challenges in my life with my relationships, with my life? Like what are some common themes? Is it because I'm kind of neglecting the striving to feel excited? I'm too rigid. I'm too follow the rules. Where do those challenges come from? So that's something to consider. Now, for our type 6, their stress arrow, also known as the supporting strategy, is the type 3. And so 3s and 6s, we've done a video on this before, but they can sometimes be mistyped because 6s identify with that workaholic energy, work, 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 but it's not working from a place of because I want to feel outstanding like our 3s. For a 6, it's working so that I feel safe. I'm going to work extra hard. I want people to see me working so they know that I care, so that I'm going to be able to keep my job. I'm going to be able to keep that paycheck coming in. So that's what that will look like from like a supporting standpoint. And some of those behaviors will be a little extra competitive. 6s tend to be really focused on teamwork, what's best for the group, but a time of stress, some of those 3 qualities and stress might come out, and being competitive, sabotaging your support systems, comparing yourself to others, working, burning out because you just keep working. It doesn't feel safe to take a breath till you're afraid the balls will drop. Now, their growth arrow, or the type that they tend to neglect the most, is the type 9, striving to feel at peace, striving to feel safe and secure. Our 9s have a tendency to kind of go with the flow. I'll trust you until you give me a reason not to, versus our 6 is I'll trust you once you give me a reason to trust you. So there's a lot of opposite energy here, which is why sometimes that 6 will neglect. It doesn't feel like striving to feel at peace supports striving to feel safe and secure. Ironically, like the other one, there are a lot of opportunities for growth for our type 6 to feel safe and secure in the uncertainty, in going with the flow, in looking for ways to allow peace and not have to control and have a backup plan for a backup plan. So that's giving you anxiety and you're like, oh my gosh, that sounds awful. I could never see myself doing that, or that would be really difficult. There might be something there as a type 6. So those are some things to consider. We've looked at some of those nuanced differences. We've looked at the movement for each of those. The last thing that I will offer that sometimes can provide some clarity is when we kind of started this video out with would you rather? Would you rather do you find yourself striving to feel at peace, or striving to feel safe and secure most of the time, most often. Sometimes you might think, gosh, both. The inverse can also provide some clues. So, which would be worse? To feel imperfect, to feel unethical, to feel bad, to not good? Um, or would it feel worse to feel unsafe, not secure, unprepared? Which would feel worse? And sometimes inversing that feeling can provide some clarity as well. So if you found any part of this video helpful, I would love to hear from you in the comments. If there have been other things that you have found helpful, I would also love to hear from you in the comments. What ends up happening a lot of times is people will share their experience, and that just adds to the conversation, makes it richer. It helps other people listen to this video, hear other tips and tricks and things to think about. So if you're willing to share, it does add value to the conversation. So would love to hear from you below there. As a reminder, my name is Sarah Wallace, founder and CEO here at Enneagram MBA, which is a team training company. So we're talking about the individual narrowing down their type, which is an important step in building great team relationships, is that self-awareness, self-management part. And then once we have that, we can all come together and start to understand others, grow in our others awareness, grow in our relationship management. And so that if that is something that could be entertaining or helpful in your specific team, group, or organization, I'm going to invite you to check out our training and workshop options over at enneagrammba.com. And with that, thank you for being here. And I hope to hear from you in the comments below.